Hello everyone, it's Kevin, and today we're looking at a game that completely caught me off guard. When I started playing through the Master System library, I expected to find a lot of good arcade-style games. Fast platformers, shooters, and maybe an RPG or two. What I wasn't expecting was to find a game that made me stop and think, wait, just how old is this? Because Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap feels like it's doing things that I normally associate with games that are on the Genesis or SNES. As someone who grew up with the NES, I had never played this before. I knew the name, but that's about it. So I figured I'd play it for a little while, get some footage, and move on to the next game. That is not how it went down. The more I played, the more I realized this wasn't just another platformer. It felt like I had stumbled across one of the earliest games to use ideas that would eventually become the Metroidvania genre. Now, I know that term didn't even exist back then, but once you play it and see it, it's hard to unsee it. So let's power on and see why Wonder Boy 3 was so far ahead of its time. Before we jump into the game, there's a bit of history here that's actually pretty interesting. The original Wonder Boy and Adventure Island actually started out as the same game. Yeah, that Adventure Island with Master Higgins. Through some licensing agreements, Sega kept the Wonder Boy name, while Hudson ended up making the Adventure Island series. So even though those two franchises went in completely different directions, they actually shared the same roots. This started with the sequel, Wonder Boy in Monsterland, where Wonder Boy did something no one expected. Instead of making another straightforward platformer, they started adding RPG mechanics, shops, equipment, and a bigger focus on exploration. This was a pretty big shift for the series. Then came Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap. Instead of going back to the platforming roots, it doubled down on these ideas. Now you've got one connected world, different character transformations, equipment upgrades, and a reason to revisit places you've already been. Looking back now, none of that sounds unusual, but remember, this was 1989. Most games back then weren't asking you to remember a cave from an hour ago, just because you'd eventually unlock a new ability to get inside. That's what makes this game feel so far ahead of its time. When I first started playing this game, nothing really seemed unusual. It just seemed like an average action platformer. That is, until you fight a dragon, and you beat it. Then, you immediately get cursed and transform into a little dragon yourself. I actually laughed at that because I thought, well, that was weird. I guess you could just get a potion to return to your human form? You know what I was getting at. I assumed it was just a funny story twist, you know. Here's your new character, sprite. Psych. But then I realized, the dragon wasn't just cosmetic. It completely changed how I played the game. It all made sense now. You start off so OP, just like in some of those Metroid games. So obviously we're going to talk about these transformations. The dragon, like I said, can breathe fire, which immediately changes how you fight enemies. He's even able to breathe fire underwater somehow. Then later, you become a mouse, and suddenly you're climbing walls that looked completely useless earlier. Then there's the piranha, which lets you explore underwater. There's a hawk that opens up the skies, and finally, a lion with stronger attacks and charisma. Every transformation isn't there just to look cool. It completely changes things up and changes where you can go. And that's where everything clicked for me. This game wasn't just giving me power-ups. It was giving me entirely new ways to explore the world. And that's a huge difference. I started taking notes of areas that look traversable in the future. I think everyone has one moment where a game suddenly starts to make sense. For me, it happened when I turned into the mouse specifically. I remembered an area that I couldn't reach earlier. I went back, and I realized, oh, this whole world is connected, and it's way bigger than what it initially looked like. That's when my brain immediately went to games like Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Again, I'm not saying this invented the genre, but you could absolutely see the building blocks. You explore, get new abilities, and you remember somewhere you couldn't reach before. So then you go back. and finally you reach new areas with your new ability. This loop is still fun today. One thing I really appreciated is that this game doesn't constantly tell you where to go. It just expects you to pay attention. Sometimes you remember a door from half an hour ago, or a passage you couldn't reach, and then you'll suddenly realize that you can now get there. Those moments are incredibly satisfying because you figured them out yourself. This game trusts you to experiment and explore. And honestly, I wish more games did that. And then, the game surprised me again. Shops are now owned by smoking pigs for some reason. No, that's not it. These shops contain new swords, different armor, and better shields. Instead of simply moving from level to level, you're constantly making your character stronger. That extra RPG layer makes exploring even more rewarding. Finding a new piece of equipment actually feels exciting because you know it'll help you survive the next section. For an 8-bit game, there's a surprising amount going on here. One thing of note is that you need charisma points to get certain items. The lion is the GOAT when it comes to this. I overlooked the items that enemies dropped at first. A lot of them were consumable attacks that will definitely help you out on the second half of the game, as it will start to get tough. Master System tough. Visually, I think this game still looks great. The sprites have a lot of personality, every transformation feels unique, the environments are colorful without being confusing, and most importantly, it's easy to tell what's happening on screen. It actually looks better than some 16-bit games. The music also deserves some credit. It's catchy without becoming annoying, which is something that you'll appreciate because you're going to hear that music a lot while exploring. Make sure you play the Japanese version for the FM audio though. It really makes a difference. There is also a code you can use in most emulators for this. The controls, they were another pleasant surprise. They're responsive, jumping feels good, combat is simple but satisfying. The only issue I had was with the mouse's blade. It is really hard to hit enemies with him at times, but it makes sense. Tiny Tim can't have the range of the other transformations. I get it. All in all, I never felt like I was fighting the controls. Whenever I made a mistake, it was usually because I got greedy, not because the game let me down. It's just like Dark Souls. It does also get very tough once you get to the samurai and ninja stage. Speaking of Dark Souls, some of these bosses have so much health, and that is part of the difficulty. Something funny though is that one of these bosses look like the inspiration for Captain K. Rool, and another is a freaking samurai. Make sure you upgrade your weapon to the Muramasa blade, however you say that, otherwise you'll be there for a long time. So, does Wonder Boy 3 still hold up today? Honestly, heck yeah it does. Sure, there are moments where you might wonder where to go next, especially if you're used to modern games putting giant objective markers on your screen. But if you're willing to explore, this game constantly rewards you. I think that's why people still talk about it 4 decades later. Not because of nostalgia, because it's genuinely well designed. One of my favorite parts of this game is the last level. It's like a gauntlet. You pass the baton to the next transformation until you get to the final boss, who is as tough as nails but satisfying to beat. Coming into this series, I've been trying to experience these games the same way someone would have back then. No nostalgia, no childhood memories, just sitting down with a controller and asking one question: is this still fun? Wonder Boy 3 answered that question pretty quickly. I thought I was getting another fun little platformer. Instead, I found a game that felt years ahead of its time, and that's probably the biggest compliment that I could give it. If you've never played it before, I definitely think it's worth checking out. And if you grew up with it, let me know what your favorite transformation was. I'd love to hear which one everyone remembers the most. As for me, I'll be waiting on Discord to talk to you guys about this and other games that we cover. And that was my shameless plug for today. In the end, I definitely wasn't expecting one of the earliest Metroidvania experiences to come from the Master System, because that's a transformation that I did not see coming. And that's a wrap. It is time to reboot, and I will see you on the other side.